There was a car going down the street, and the driver was going very erratically. And there was an officer who saw this car driving down, and he started following the car. Eventually, he stopped the driver. The driver, of course, was very upset. He said, "Officer, what did I do wrong?" And he said, "Well, you didn't break any laws, but you were driving very dangerously, and I should probably give you a ticket. But my concern is that this car is stolen." So the driver said, "What do you mean the car is stolen? It's mine." So he said, "Well, I saw the bumper sticker on the back of the car that said, 'Honk if you love Jesus,' and I figured you couldn't be a Christian if you were driving the way you were." And so today we hear that our actions have to speak louder than our faith. And some people would say that a religious person doesn't have the right to criticize their faith or their actions. And in fact, there's a discussion or argument going on even now on Facebook and Twitter, and on the news you'll hear about someone who was a very religious leader who criticized the actions of another person, and the other person said it was disgraceful that a religious leader would criticize their faith. Jesus here is criticizing the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the scribes. Why? Because their actions did not indicate their faith in God. They, we know, were criticized often because they expected more out of the faithful than they themselves were willing to do. And so if we place ourselves in a position of prominence and leadership, and we say that we're one thing, then we have to live that faith. We have to live who and what we are, just as the Lord tells us and asks us. In the first reading, we hear about the people complaining that God isn't fair, isn't just. And maybe we're familiar with that if we're parents. You hear that. That's not fair. If you're a child, certainly. You've said it often enough. I know growing up, my sister and I would say it to our parents because they weren't treating us the same. And they really were. But we were watching subjectively instead of objectively, naturally. And so we look at the ways of God, and they are fair and they are just, because all of us need to live according to our own faith. And that faith must be shown forth in action. We must be willing to live our faith each and every moment, not just when people are watching, because what good is that? Jesus in the gospel tells us, "You shall not kill," but not only should you not kill, you shouldn't think evil of another. You shouldn't even call anyone a fool or raka, which basically is saying that someone else is an idiot. We've never used that language, have we? Drivers probably say it often. If you don't say it when you're driving, then you probably don't drive often enough, because it's very easy to come out of your mouth. And we hear Jesus saying that even that goes against the commandment that you shall not kill. Why? Because you're taking something away from another person. Even if only in your own mind, you're taking the dignity away of a creature of God, a child of God, one who is the same as you in God's eyes. And so we listen to this gospel, and we take care to live our faith, to live that into which we are baptized, to live as ambassadors for Christ, bringing Christ to others. If we're judged by our actions, then we need to make sure that our actions indicate that we love God, that we love Jesus Christ, and that we're willing to live according to his commands. If we have something that is standing in our way of going forth, coming forth to this altar, we must take care of that before we continue. When I read this, I think, I hope everyone returns, because there'll be nothing in the collection. Certainly not something a pastor would indicate. But nevertheless, when we come forth, when we approach the altar, our minds and our hearts should be pure. They should be willing to live God, not just here in church, not just during Mass, but at every moment. At every moment, even when it's difficult, to know, to love our brothers and sisters, and to prove our faith and our love of God.